If you are a Christian who has ignored government, doesn't really think it's the church's place to care about government or politics or things like that, then I'm glad you clicked on today's video, because we are going to be debunking that myth and kind of showing what the Bible says about why we need to care about government as Christians, especially now more than ever. And a lot of us might have read different passages in the Bible that talk about this, so let's kind of open it up with that, because obviously that's where we get our authority from God and our direction on how we need to operate in today's world. I'm going to be starting out in 1 Timothy chapter 2, and this is Paul speaking to Timothy, and here's what Paul says. He says, "First of all, then, I urge that requests, prayers, intercessions, and thanks be offered on behalf of all people, even for kings and all who are in authority, that we may lead a peaceful and quiet life in all godliness and dignity." And a lot of us have heard this verse before, so let's go ahead and break it down a little bit on what Paul's really talking about here. Now, it is pretty self-explanatory, but look at what he says when he says, even for kings and all who are in authority. So first off, ordering us, hey, when I say pray for all people, I'm especially meaning government as well, right? Because Paul's putting a special emphasis on that. And we have to imagine the early church at this time did not like government, right? They had a very oppressive government. This was the time when Rome was not a fan of Christianity. So I can't blame them much for not wanting to pray for their government. So Paul gives kind of a special emphasis here. Hey, you need to think and care and pray about these things. And he also says, so that we may lead a peaceful and quiet life in all godliness and dignity. So that's interesting, because it's kind of two parts to that. The first part is Paul affirming that, hey, even though we all share a part of the Great Commission as the church, and we all have a mission and a calling, it's okay to, on top of that, also pursue and value a quiet and peaceful life. And we have to remember too, as Christians, we really have two mandates on our life. One is to go and make disciples in all nations, right? So whether it's the nation that you live in, whether you're a missionary and you're going out to different nations, whatever it might be, we have a call and mandate from God that wherever we are, we need to make disciples. We need to help bring people not only to know Jesus and be saved, but also to grow and be discipled by him. So that's one of the main mandates there. But we also have to remember another mandate, which goes all the way back to Genesis for all mankind, when God says, be fruitful and multiply. So God hasn't taken away that mandate either, right? So at the same time, Paul is affirming, which we appreciate, it's okay to want to value a peaceful and quiet life, especially that helps us with raising children and building families and multiplying the earth like God said. And the second part of it is also saying that we can do so in all godliness and dignity. So it's also emphasizing that having a healthy government helps the church to not only pursue building healthy families and pursue the Great Commission, but at the same time, just to pursue godliness and holiness in general. We want to be a church that's known for our godliness, for our holiness, right? Jesus is coming back for a holy bride. So it's cool how Paul ties those things into the government, almost saying, hey, if we have a government that respects and appreciates Christianity, then we're going to have a better chance of being able to not only build healthy families and lives, but also to pursue godliness and holiness. So I could just end the video right there, but let's go a little bit further into it too. Now we'll kind of go back a few hundred years into the Old Testament. This is going to be in the book of Jeremiah, specifically Jeremiah chapter 29, which a lot of us are familiar with that chapter because we've heard verses like Jeremiah 29, verse 11. What's going on in this chapter? Well, Jeremiah is speaking to an Israel that's about to go into captivity and exile into Babylon. And we see verse 11, like we talked about, that is encouragement. But let's go a few verses back into verse 7. So this is Jeremiah 29:7. Again, Jeremiah talking to Israel, it's about to be exiled, and here's what he says. He says, "But seek the welfare of the city where I have sent you into exile, and pray to the Lord on its behalf, for in its welfare you will find your welfare." So that's really interesting, right? Because obviously we're talking about Babylon here, and Israel's going into it, and he's saying, don't just go into this place empty-minded, but actually seek the welfare, or some translations say prosperity. Seek the prosperity of this nation. Work with them to try to make it more prosperous, because if the nation prospers, then you will prosper. In the nation's welfare, you'll find your welfare. And that's why Jeremiah says you need to pray and intercess about not only God helping with that, but on what you can do too. And that's really interesting, because Israel's only going to be here for 70 years or so, and God kind of confirmed that with them. This isn't their final resting place, as you could say. This isn't where they're hoping to raise their grandkids and their kids and so on. So God's saying even for them in that scenario, seek and work and pray and care about the welfare of that nation. Not just the spiritual aspect, but every aspect of it. So how much more should we, as actual residents and citizens of our nations, fight and pray and care about the welfare of it? And if you find yourself living in a nation that's not somewhere where you're a citizen, well, take this example with Israel. They weren't citizens of Babylon either, but the Lord said, still pray, intercess, and work with them. Be intentional, be strategic about the welfare of this country, because you'll find your welfare in that too. You know, as somebody who lives in America, we've seen time and time again where immigrants will come into America, but they won't care about America. And God bless the ones that do. There are many that have, but there's many more that haven't. And they just come here and they trash the places where they live. And it's so sad to see. And if any of those people claim to be Christians, this is a great correction to that behavior. I'm still calling you to pray that this place prospers because you live here. And we see this all over the world. Many of you watching have probably heard in the recent weeks about everything happening with Venezuela. What a crazy situation, right? But I'm telling you, you have a country that now has a chance, and we got to keep praying for Venezuela because stuff could still go wrong. They have a chance to have freedom and have another second chance at prosperity as a nation. But it started with people praying. You see, if you research Venezuela, you'll see that the people voted and handed over the country pretty much to a socialist regime. And ever since then, you have a country with some of the richest natural resources, have some of the highest poverty and crime rates. It's been terrible to see, just complete annihilation of the people by the government. This is a very wicked and secular government. And it started with people realizing the mistake and praying and praying and praying and praying. So many Venezuelans have been praying for decades. And now we see that there's hope. There's a big glimmer of hope happening that we saw recently in the news with the president being removed. And what did you see after it happened? You see videos of people, Venezuelans in the street, crying, cheering, celebrating, and so many that were still praying afterwards. And they'd be interviewed and they'd say, we've been praying our whole lives for this, and God has helped us. God has intervened. He has delivered us. My wife and I even know some Venezuelans personally who have been displaced from Venezuela for 10 plus years, and they couldn't be more happy. We see them post every day about it online, and they are just ecstatic. And they're also Christians. They just are so thankful that God has helped intervene and use another country, being America, to help intervene and rescue another country's people. And what's beautiful about this too is we're seeing a nation that is truly ripe for revival, because what's happening is there's been pastors who have been in prison, churches who have been shut down because they spoke out about the truth. And now these pastors are being released from jail. These churches are being reopened. There's plans. There's a harvest that's ripe. And what you're going to see, my friends, is you're going to see Venezuelans and the country of Venezuela as a whole come back. Many have already the past few years, and they're going to continue to come back, and you're going to see revival sweep there and continue to sweep throughout South America. And it all started with government. It all started, God used a government. God used a government. So my friends, God is still in the business today of using governments, just like we see in the past. We saw it with Persia. They came in. Speaking of Jeremiah, you know what happened in that story? Well, Israel went to exile in Babylon, but who came in and released Israel back? It was Persia. They conquered Babylon, and then they said, you know what? We're going to release your people back. And that was God's plan. He knew that would happen after 70 years. So guys, as a church, we need to humble ourselves if we think that, oh, we shouldn't care about government. Well, God does. God still uses government. So who are we to say that we're better than God? That, oh, we don't need to concern ourselves with government, but yet God orders us and says, I need you to pray into this. I need you to partner with me on this. You see, some of us as Christians, we don't get involved with that. And we say, you know what, our mission is just to help and to love people. But then these same people won't pray and care about the government. And government's more than just lower taxes or lower gas prices. Let me show you a couple statistics here that'll blow your mind a little bit. That shows you that lives are at stake depending on who's in charge of the government. See, if you didn't believe me with Venezuela on that, and trust me, you can look into that. Lives were at stake because of a bad and immoral government. But let's look here in the US, if you're an American just like I am. In the US in 2024, it's averaged that 25.7% of all pregnancies were aborted, equaling 1.14 million babies murdered. And you know, if you've looked into this, the rates of how many were casual abortions that weren't medically needed for life and death scenarios is typically about 99% plus, somewhere around 99.5 or 6%. Those were babies casually murdered because we have governmental policies that say that's okay. Guys, lives are at stake. This isn't just lower taxes we're talking about. And God's saying, surely I can count on my church. Surely my church will stand up. They'll stand in the gap. They'll be the ones that say enough is enough. We need change in this. Lives are at stake. One general theme in the Bible that you see everywhere is defending the innocent. And yet we're not doing that, whether they're in the womb or whether they're out of it. And God's saying, surely my church will help. They'll realize it. They'll have the moral compass to step into this. And so many of us put our heads in the sand and we say, we don't care. We don't care. You know what? That's not what Jesus did. I'm sorry. Do you remember who wrote the Old Testament? Speaking of the Old Testament, let's go back one more time. This is going to be with the prophet Micah. Micah chapter 3. Let's take a look at what he has to say when a nation like Israel had bad leaders that were immoral. Micah says, I said, listen, you leaders of Israel. You are supposed to know right from wrong, but you are the very ones who hate good and love evil. You beg the Lord for help in times of trouble. Do you really expect him to answer? After all the evil you have done, he won't even look at you. Listen to me, you leaders of Israel. You hate justice and twist all that is right. You are building Jerusalem on a foundation of murder and corruption. Because of you, Mount Zion will be plowed like an open field. Jerusalem will be reduced to ruins. My friends, God does not play around with these things. There has to be justice. You see, God is a just God, right? There has to be justice. And when we have lives being lost because of our government, innocence being stolen, then God is going to step in. That's why it's most important, if we want to be the church in this nation, if we want to have a healthy country that we can raise our kids in, we have to make sure that the country as a whole is not on God's bad side. And that starts with having rulers and people in power who respect the Bible, who respect God, who fear God, and they honor the values instilled within His Word. And the beautiful thing is, when we have that, there's hope that the land can be healed. So let's kind of finish and wrap it up on this verse in 2 Chronicles chapter 7, verse 14. Then if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, I will hear from heaven, and I will forgive their sins and restore their land. My eyes will be open, and my ears attentive to every prayer made in that place. So that's the hope of today, is it's never too late until it's too late. But it's not too late yet because we're still here. So guys, let us who are in these countries that have elections rise to the occasion and say, what can we do, God, to help? Where it's not just enough just to pray that God heals it, but it's praying too of, what can I do, God? What can we do? What can my church do? Because we have a system where you can elect people, and that includes everyday people, people that are involved at your church, maybe a pastor, maybe an elder, whoever it might be. And we can pray, whether it's in America, whether it's Venezuela, whether it's whatever country you're in, pray that there would be leaders and that there would be a revival. Because it starts with revival and it trickles its way up into the government. Anyways, thank you all for listening to this today. I hope this helps bring a little bit more clarity into such a profound topic that a lot of people just don't want to talk about in the church. But guys, we need to, and I'm glad we did today. Anyways, thanks for listening. May the Lord bless you, and keep your eyes open for some new content coming your way from this channel. But again, thanks for listening today, and take care.